And welcome back to another episode of Building the Board. My name is Quentin Crisco. I am joined by Luke O'Grady and Seth Conklin today as they're going to talk about some of the cornerback prospects in this year's draft class the Bears should be targeting. If you've been paying attention to us recently, you know the drill already, but if not, we have a bracket up here
Yep.
on the screen of 16 different cornerbacks that are going to be touched on here today. It's no longer March. March Madness just ended, but we're keeping on with the March Madness theme. These guys' goal is to whittle this thing down to the cornerback most likely to be a Chicago Bear come the end of the draft.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I'll hand it over to you.
Yep. And just to be clear, most likely it's not a prediction. Like, it's not something we think, I think there's a difference between the one we think is best and the one that we think is most likely. I think as far as like explanatory purposes, we're going to list who we think is best, and the cards will fall as they may. We're not really like trying to guess who might be there when we pick, kind of thing. We're just based on, what we think would be good for the defense and the defense that Dennis Allen plays, who we think would be best for the Bears.
Yeah, it's always important to remember scheme fit over just like players you like, because at the end of the day, that's what coaches are looking at.
Yeah, and for corners, Dennis Allen likes those long rangy outside corners, and he's had a lot of success with some guys that can get his hands on you. With his safeties, he likes guys that can be a little bit more maybe like Swiss Army knife type guys that aren't scared to get their nose dirty, but someone you wouldn't feel like terrible about leaving in the middle of the field. And we'll get to the safety, I think, episode later tonight. But for corners, if you're kind of, slot's a little bit different. We kind of had that locked up, hopefully, with Kyler Gordon. But I think there probably is, if the best player available on their board is a cornerback when they pick in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised if they went that direction. And that would likely be for some competition on the outside corner position. So, think about that long-armed press corner who can, think about the Marshawn Lattimores of the world, Jalen Johnson even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And solid athletes, like just because they're long, they still got to have some speed, not necessarily agility, but they do like a little bit of explosiveness mixed in there too.
Yeah, and that's probably like something as one of those true press stay outside corner guys, you can kind of give up being a little bit, more agile. Like in the last couple of years, we've seen, Joey Porter Jr. or Sauce Gardner, those guys where it's like they didn't really test great moving, like, moving side to side. But when, you do well playing with leverage in the sideline, you don't usually need to. So when you're looking at those like RAS scores, the things you want to see is that straight line speed with Dennis Allen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you want to jump into it? We're going to kind of go through here. It's unfortunate because a couple of these guys that are probably, me and you may like are going to get knocked off just by the nature of the beast in the first round because they're up against, people that are 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds, things like that. But we're just going to go through and, talk about each, maybe briefly. If, someone like Mansoor Delane, we probably don't need to talk about too much every round.
Yeah.
We can talk about him when it starts to get, down to crunch time because he is our 1 seed here. But yeah, okay. So Mansoor Delane, right?
Yep. It'd be fun if he fell.
Neal. I think this is kind of a no-brainer for us.
Yeah. There's no way. I mean, no way Delane probably even makes it outside of the top 10. And to be honest, of the two of them, Julian Neal probably fits the archetype of a DA corner more anyway, and we can break him down a little bit further since Delane's not even going to be there. But when you've got that kind of length, that he might have the longest arms of any of these corners with really strong explosiveness, not necessarily like the quickest athlete, but he's got some speed and he tested really, really well with the vert and broad jump, like kind of screams that Al Harris DA kind of archetype.
Yeah, I think so too. I think honestly, in the grand scheme of things, and even like in our bracket, him being 16, he is kind of a little bit slept on in this cycle. It feels like. I think doing that outside corner thing, I like his game. Like you said, he's got long arms. He's long himself. I think he's like 6'2", and his hands have good pop too. It's not just that like he can get on you early. Like he's got some pop to them, like fighting off blocks and in press. I think his click and close can be a little slow, but he's got good instincts. So I think that kind of helps, like, kind of make up for a little of that. He's not an elite athlete. At least it didn't seem like that on tape. I know when he tested, I thought that was great for him, but he's also definitely not a bad athlete out there.
No, and he makes up for, I mean, like, obviously there's going to be moments like double moves and quick twitch wide receivers where some of that stuff's going to be exposed, but he's going to make up for it with his ability to kind of close that gap with speed a little bit and also use that length to just absolutely smother, and he can jump out of the gym. So that definitely works in his favor and definitely fits more of that press man role, because we're not going to be asked to do a whole lot of zone work.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that he's sometimes I think he can get himself into trail a little bit too easy. I think he could probably stay like neck and neck with him more if he wanted to, but I think he plays that trail position like really well and with some nice patience. Like, I like Julian Neal as a player and a fit. I just think, there's no way if they were both available to us, we would take him over Mansoor here, unfortunately.
No.
All right, so Mansoor moves on. All right, this will be a good one. I think, me and you have no idea really what each other's rankings look like, so it'll be interesting to kind of hear how we fall on some of these closer matchups, and then we get into some of the later matchups. But Davison, I wouldn't even begin. I've been calling him Iggy. Anyway, he's got ideal size. I think he's like 6'1", like 195. I think his coverage could use a little bit of work. It looks a little bit raw right now, but he does a lot of the stuff that you want an outside, the other stuff you want an outside corner to do really well. Like, he's got a good jam. He's a good down hill tackler. Like, he can be a little stiff, but sometimes he can also flash some nice change of direction when he's like not playing too fast. Overall, I think that, like, for me, it's funny to say that, everything except his coverage I really like, but his coverage could use some work.
Yeah, I like the physicality and the energy that he plays with. It's funny that these two are kind of grouped together, because I kind of both see them both as like the energetic, can be a little handsy. I'm a Michigan fan, so there's a little bit of bias, but also a little bit of watching him a lot. Davison just is so grabby. I don't have the numbers, but it feels like he was penalized like 3-4 times a game. But so like he's got to rein that in, and I not entirely sure that he can. It's not that he plays like hot and gets into like sticky situations in terms of like trying to fight or anything. It's just that he is so aggressive that he gets in his own way. Like, he has the ability to do things, but if you're giving up, big chunk penalties, that can get you in a lot of trouble. And with this coaching staff, can get you into the doghouse quick.
I honestly, when I'm doing DB reviews, I like to look at like the balance between pass interference penalties and pass breakups, especially for that outside corner press position, because you're always going to be right in their pocket. So it's like you're always kind of walking that balance of being right in there. Like, the greatest press corners are the guys that, the wide receivers are asking for the calls but don't get them. And Iggy kind of flows around that 50-50 mark where, you kind of, especially in college, like, you'd want that to be a little bit closer to the pass breakups being like 70-30. So it could come a little bit closer to 50-50 in the NFL. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I just looked at it real quick. He had 30 flags in his collegiate career, which is staggering. I didn't realize it was even that many. But he's super disruptive, and like, if the ball gets there, good luck to the receiver, because he's going to smack them. And if it is a 50-50 ball, there's a decent chance that ball's hitting the ground. He is very disruptive and very good at hitting that attack point. It's just the before the catch stuff. If he can clean that up, there's a lot to be like. And he just got to get his technique down. And Some of that could be coaching, sometimes in collegiate stuff, they just be aggressive, go out there and do it, and we'll figure the rest out. Just be disruptive.
He is a 4-year starter, so you'd almost want him to be a little bit more polished by this point. But he did clean up the penalties a lot. He had 15 penalties in 2024. I think he only had 5 this year. So we got better there. And, he played in a big program. I think that kind of helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of cleanup is impressive and does show, the ability to improve. So that's good on that mark. You'd hate to see 10-8 with minimal improvement, but there's definitely a lot to like there. How do you feel about Keith Abney?
I really like Keith Abney. I think he's a nice player. He's got a good balance of being disciplined and knowing when to be disciplined, but every once in a while, really leaning into his instincts and kind of make a play for your defense. He's a fairly good tackler. He can make a big tackle for you, but I think the way that he tackles is kind of inconsistent. So he can miss some, I think, a little by going too hard, but just good at a lot of stuff, good instincts, plays the game the right way. I don't know if he's an elite athlete. I don't know exactly. I'm not sure how he tested.
I don't have his testing numbers, but even if he didn't test fantastically, in those short area moments, he displays enough athleticism to get things done. I do agree with you. I like the way he plays. If he were an elite athlete, we'd be talking about him in a much different light. He's that energetic guy. I think he probably has the inside outside versatility, that you'd like to see. I don't know if he's quick enough to play in the slot full time, but definitely somebody you could throw in there on occasion. But I do like the way he plays. He plays very physical without getting a ton of penalties. There's still, a decent amount there, but when you can play that brand of football and basically make the wide receivers day hell for 60 minutes, it's always good in my book.
Yeah, but see, you know what? This is my issue with RAS. My issue with RAS is that it treats someone that's basically 5'10", 190 like they're a Smurf.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like that, for me, as long as you play bigger than that and have good instincts, which I think, Keith Abney does, that's a fine cornerback size.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you get graded he's second percentile because every 2 years a cornerback is 6'5" and now he's 99 and the whole scale gets broken. If those numbers were both 8s, then his RAS would be a lot more respectable.
Yeah, well, and with that size, if he played to that size, if you're watching it and be like, oh yeah, he's playing real small, I could understand it, but he doesn't play with any fear. He doesn't play he plays like he's 6'2". He's going to hit you with everything. He might bounce off of you, and he might, he might have some issues against big body guys, but he's not going to play small or shy away from things. And when you're that size, you have to be, or else it doesn't work out well.
Yeah, I think some of the issue with him was one of those other red numbers you saw there was his 3-cone, and that kind of shows up on tape. Or no, it was a shuttle. I mean, his 3-cone wasn't great either, and that kind of showed up on tape a little bit. Again, it's not as bad if you are going to be playing the strictly the wide position. If your side to side movement isn't great, but there's a lot on at times especially over routes on films where he was really having to show off that 4.45 speed to chase up to the guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and in that scheme, I feel like if you've got the speed to recover and do things, it's definitely going to benefit you more than being the quickest athlete. So while he may not have the size, I think his straight line speed and play style really kind of fit in with the mentality that Ben Johnson, DA, and Al Harris like.
Yep.
And he's definitely he's that guy you want on your team. He's going to be a tone setter.
I agree.
You gotta have those guys on defense. We didn't really have a ton of that last year.
I'm happy to go Keith here.
Yeah, I think the way he plays fits that mold well.
Yeah. In the lens of what's best for the Bears, I like that.
This next one is such an interesting matchup in terms of just
Yeah.
traits versus what the film
The
says.
player. Yeah. You want to start with Brandon? Brandon, I'm not sure how to pronounce Cisse. Cisse?
I think it's Cisse.
Cisse?
Yeah.
Attaboy Q. Yeah, you want to go first?
Yeah, where did that go?
I can go first. I got my notes up here.
Yeah, no, you can lead the charge on that one.
Yeah, Cisse, similar to, honestly, with most guys that are going to be on this list today, and a lot of the guys that are really just the guys that are standouts within the class. He plays specifically, or more frequently on the outside. Not a whole lot of slot movement from these guys. Some of these guys we'll discuss will move in for maybe 20 to 30% of their snaps to the inside.
Mhm.
Cisse, another pure outside guy. He's a nice player, man. He's a willing tackler. He's got nice. I'm surprised by his shuttle. I remember by his film, I thought he had nice movement and coverage too. But sometimes having really good instincts can kind of mask having not the best movement skills. He's an aggressive player. He's not scared to put his nose in there, and even in his decision making, he's really aggressive. Like when he click and closes, he's got conviction. It's fun to watch him play. He's a high floor guy, good tackler, doesn't really get burned, plays the game smart. I'm not sure if I think he's I honestly I don't want to say he's a high floor guy because I feel like he's a high ceiling guy too. I really
I would say he's far more, at least in my eyes, far more high ceiling than high floor. I think his traits and his athleticism are really good, and the flashes are really, really fun. I think the inconsistency is why he would, be available, further down the technique. He's able to kind of correct some of those things in the moment because of the traits that he has. I think if you can get his technique where it needs to be, he could be very good. But I think some of those technical things at the next level could give him some trouble where, he's no longer the best athlete there. I'm a little lower on him than a lot of people. I think the traits are fun. And, if you want to bet on the future and bet on what he can be, I think definitely is a worthwhile thing. I worry that some of his inconsistencies, especially with the boomer bust kind of mentality that a lot of the Al Harris guys tend to be. And if they kind of lean more into that, I feel like the bust part of his game could be really exposed. Similar to how Nashawn was there was a lot of picks, but there were a lot of big plays given up. And I feel like that could be a similar thing for him, but he doesn't have the size to make up for some of those things at the next level. But trait wise, if he gets it to click, he could be one of the better corners in this class.
Yep. You want to, and then, so this is up against Devin Moore. Devin Moore, another, pure outside guy, 6'3", 200. I think similar to Cisse in that, a lot of the dirty work of being a cornerback he does well. So he seems I think he'll get a high floor type, type of evaluation. He comes down hard in the run game. He'll blitz off the edge for you. I think in coverage, I honestly feel like he leaves a lot to be desired. I think he feels like he's a little bit stuck in the mud compared to some of these other guys that are going to be those long armed press cornerbacks for you in this class.
Yeah, he doesn't have that fluidity that some of these other guys do have. I think the biggest thing for him was just how much lack of total play time has stunted his development. I wonder how that shoulder is. I wonder, how he's holding up and how he'll do in medicals. I don't know exactly how, but I think it was well under 20 games that he started in his career, and he seemed to have injuries basically every year. And I think that really set him back. You see flashes, you see some ability, but I do think some of his fluidity or lack of it kind of probably stems a little bit from confidence, which you kind of just develop more from more film study, more play time, more experience, and confidence that if you hit someone, your shoulder's not going to give out.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I like the player Cisse more, but I think that there's a world where you could say that like someone like a Devin Moore would be more attractive to like what DA envisions.
Yeah, well, and that definitely, like in terms of the size, he definitely fits more of that role. But I do think the speed and everything of Cisse fits in line more with what Poles has kind of quadrupled down on. And depending on how they view the injury history, when they've already got, Kyler Gordon who can't stay on the field, and Jalen's, a prime example of different injuries throughout, his career, whether it's shoulder or soft tissue things, that could definitely be something that they look at and go, let's take the traits guy who we feel more confident can be on the field and we can develop more, versus necessarily going that route. So, I honestly could go either way. That's why this one's a trickier one.
Yeah, I mean, I like Cisse the prospect more. So I think like if we're just fighting for Devin Moore strictly because of the fit and like we're not close on that, let's just go Cisse.
Yeah, no, I think that's where the Bears would be too. In just strictly looking at, health things and all of the things together, I think Cisse is the more, attractive prospect and has more general versatility on the defense.
Yep. Okay, cool. Number 4, Colton Hood versus number 13, Will Lee.
I really like Colton Hood.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those dudes who's just going to be a dog and body people. He's going to have some issues at times with real quick, twitchy people. I once saw that one of his comps is Carlton Davis, and I think that's a pretty darn good comp. He plays with that intensity. He's definitely going to have those moments of things, but he's got decent size. He's not huge. He's but close to that 6 foot marker. Hits hard, plays really well, pretty solid in coverage, and does a lot of things well. I think he's got a really strong floor. I don't think the ceiling's like exponentially high, but I do think there's enough athleticism and everything there to be a really good second corner option if Jalen is able to get back to it. I'm not sure how I feel if he's like your number 1 corner, but he could get there in a year or two.
Yeah, I really like Colton Hood. I think, like you said, I think he is high floor just because he plays like he's shot out of a cannon, but he's still disciplined too. Like he doesn't do that in a sloppy way. I agree. I think his lateral. I think he's better than people give him credit for moving side to side. Like I don't think that not doing the agility testing is like a submission by him. I think sometimes just bad footwork can like he can get like choppy a little bit and like and sometimes take too many hops at the line of scrimmage and not be out of his third hop by the time someone's already like breaking in. But I think his like movement ability is there. He just like technique stuff. And when he's playing free and fast, like he has great sense. He has nice footwork. He's not exactly strong. I kind of feel like sometimes he can get bullied at the block point. But from a coverage point of view, he has some really, really nice like reps of mirroring.
Yeah, there's definitely some like block shedding things that I don't love on film, but in terms of guys who are going to go out there and really give you strong coverage ability and not be something that you're worried about of giving up a big play. Somebody who's just going to be there and hold it down, who, if needed to kick in for a few reps or things like that, can do it. I haven't watched much of any reps of him in terms of blitzing ability, but he seems like he's got the kind of decisiveness that if they ask him to come off the edge, he's going to light someone up.
Watching him play wide receiver screens would give you any indication of how he would run off the edge, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that gives me, some good feelings, and he definitely doesn't have like great play strength, but when you fire in with reckless abandon, you can kind of make up for that a little bit. And I do like that about him.
Yeah. I really like Colton Hood. I don't know how the bracket's going to work out, but I bet you it wouldn't be the last time I vouch for him. Do you have any thoughts on Will Lee?
I just don't see it with him.
I love that. If you read my notes in front of me, man, I was actually just reading them back thinking, damn, I was being harsh that day.
And you know what? I don't think you are. He doesn't have top end speed. If you give him a little speed to have to handle on, deep routes, vertical routes, he doesn't have it in him.
Gets panicky in coverage.
You want to talk about like somebody who can't fight off blocks and gets muddied up and just gets swallowed up.
My first note is he plays small, and I said he's a willing but bad tackler.
Yes, he just doesn't. I don't know 100% what it is, if he's just bad with his hands or just leverage in general, but he doesn't impress me with the size he has. He doesn't. You wouldn't like if you told me he was 5'10" with 30-inch arms. I believe you.
I looked him up and was like, he's gonna be 5'10", and then I looked him up and saw he was 6'1", and that's why my first note was play small. I was like, no, he is not 6'1". That's a falsified 6'1".
Yeah, and there's just so many plays left on the table, and especially with how much speed is in our division, I would not want him on the field. It may seem harsh, but in the right scheme or something, maybe there's something to be had for him, but I just don't see it. He's my he's my lowest rated.
He wouldn't be very high. Yeah, I don't know if there'd be many people I have below him at the moment. Sounds a little like Nashawn Wright. There's actually a couple guys in this class that play like Nashawn Wright.
Oh, I've got one where my note is Nashawn clone.
I wonder if I have two guys where I was like, that's kind of, so we'll see. D'Angelo Pons versus Daylen Everette. I love D'Angelo Pons' game. I think you guys were talking about him when we talked on. You mentioned, if this person was bigger, they'd be an All-Pro, and I was like, he's got to be Pons.
Yeah, I firmly believe if Pons was 6 foot to 6'1", he'd probably be in conversation for top corner in this class. There's not enough nice things that can be said. He plays with absolute reckless abandon. He throws himself around in ways that somebody his size should not, and he does not care.
Totally.
And he's an exceptional athlete.
And he has an uncanny ability to play in that really, really reckless pocket, but it doesn't ever really feel out of control with him. It's really
organized chaos.
Patient. Yeah. He moves so well. He's got great game sense. He's, that's his size there. That's a lot of red for height and weight, but unlike Will Lee, he plays so much bigger than that. He can take on a block, and if he doesn't want to take it on, he can slash by it and still be in position to make the tackles. His click and close is really impressive. He's like a complete general out there. The whole defense gets energy from him.
Yeah, you just check all the boxes. Great athlete. He knifes through. If there's a screen, he's knifing through it. He's hitting. If you ask him to blitz, oh man, if he catches you not looking, even though he's small, he's going to light you up. The only real negatives I have on him were that because of his size, when he tries to wrap up bigger carriers or bigger wide receivers, He can get moved around and dragged a little bit, and in blocking, he's going to fight like hell. But there's definitely going to be some reps where he's going to look real small. But I love this guy. I think he's going to be one of the best slot corners in the NFL in no time.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, though, right? Like I don't think he played a lick of slot in college, did he?
No, but his skills are tailor-made for
totally. There's no doubt watching him, you'd think that he can do it. That he has no movement issues. He's got good game sense. But it would be interesting. I haven't heard anything from the draft process about his place on it. I wonder if he's like, I'll play wherever they play me, or if he's like, I'm an outside corner.
I think he was just so good that they almost had to play him on the outside. Like he was just that good. And, I don't know if you saw his vert, but like the dude can just leap. He can get into contested catches and everything.
43 inches is crazy.
Yeah. He plays every bit of it. It's
43 inches is insane. I'm surprised that that's not a 10.
Yeah, it should be. And what's awesome is when you see somebody with a high vertical that knows how to utilize it and knows how to time it. Because sometimes you'll see people with high verticals, but they suck at timing things. And because of his size, he has to time things perfectly, even with that vertical. And man, he does so well with it.
He's going to be 4.38 is blazing. And he plays that way too. Yeah, I love Pons. It's unfortunate because the guy he's playing against in this tier is Daylen Everette. And I like this play. It's unfortunate he's not going to beat Pons for me, but I like the player. And it's honestly, if we wanted to talk about something where it's one of those fit things. This could be this is something where this is more. Daylen Everette is much more, something that DA would look for. Like you could grab a Pons and almost like use him like he used Tyrann Mathieu and put him all over the field, and Pons would be fine in that role too, no doubt about it. But this would be, as far as like a typical outside corner, more where DA would lean. I'm just so much higher on Pons as a prospect that I just couldn't put Daylen Everette past him right now.
No, but I mean, if I had it my way, Pons would make it, to the end of the bracket. The one thing I will say about Everette, and I don't know if we can kind of do a side-by-side of Kyler Gordon's RAS score and size. I know Everette played more outside. I think he has a decent bit of versatility with his athleticism. My biggest thing with him, which I think is probably going to be just a massive turnoff to DA, is when I watch his film, it feels like he lets off the gas more than he should. If he's like kind of beat, it's like, I'm beat.
Yeah.
And with his athleticism, I feel like that shouldn't happen as much as it kind of felt. Like I feel like the way he tested doesn't always translate to how it looks in the film. And if he played at a consistent level, I feel like he could be really good. I don't know what that stems from. If that is just the environment he was in there, but I mean, it's Georgia, so you'd think they'd, harp on things at a different level. But there were just times where it's like he'd either be grabby, or if he got kind of beat, you could see him let up on it a little bit. And if he could like tighten that focus, he could be a fun guy that you could have, in the slot or outside. But as much as the traits are there, there's just no way. Prospect to prospect. If we were choosing in the second round between the two, that I would take him over Pons.
Yeah, I thought Daylen Everette. He plays fast. He's aggressive. He feels like he's a leader on that defense too. He's got good instincts. I kind of agree. He like, I don't want to say he's soft, but like I have a note that says he's a little bit slender, and he kind of plays like it too. Like he doesn't really work hard to like try and fight the fact that he's little, like some other little guys do. He can just kind of get washed away from a play and be fine with it. And I don't know, didn't love it.
Yeah, there's things to like, but I left his tape feeling disappointed. Like I just expected more of it with some of the some of the things I'd heard and seen some of his testing and, being at
Right.
Georgia, I just expected more. I walked away from it going, just disappointed.
Yep. All right, cool. So we got Pons through.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Avieon Terrell versus Tacario Davis. Anyone you want to specifically start on here?
Well, we can start with Avieon. I mean, he's got,
Sure.
if you want to say, the NFL bloodlines.
Bloodline, he does.
Kind
Another
of
corner I love,
brother.
Really, AJ Terrell. He does.
I like him a lot. I don't know. He's another one of those guys where, like, I feel like he's got a pretty decent ceiling. He's got a pretty strong floor.
He ran a 4.64.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
wow,
he tested
man.
terribly.
That's crazy because that's not how it looks like he plays at all, man. I actually have a note. He's a good mover. It feels like he's shot out of a cannon.
Yeah. He's definitely, like, when he doesn't have to think, he definitely moves really well. I think his floor is really solid. I think he does a lot of things really well. I don't know if he does anything in particular, like, exceptionally well, which is hard for me to get really excited. But he's one of those guys where you plug in at number 2 and you're like, I feel confident that we're going to be fine. But he's not one of those guys where I'm like, oh, let's roll out the first round pick. I know a lot of people are high on him. I think if he can get to a ceiling, he could be a really strong number 2, but he's one of those guys where if in a year's time, he's your number 1 corner, I don't love it, but maybe that's just because his film doesn't excite me. And it's not that he's not good. It's just, you can kind of get bored with the solidness of his play.
Yeah. I'm actually wondering, man, that's it's pretty interesting to see those RAS numbers because it feels pretty stark from what it looked like on film. And I'm wondering if his brother tested a lot better, but I guess maybe it sounded like Hugh said maybe he was battling an injury as well. His tape,
injury related.
His tape I really love. Like I kind of feel like laterally and long, it's all really smooth. Like I felt like he was an elite mover, so that's why those numbers are pretty impressive, or pretty surprising to me. I think he's just a ball player. Like it makes sense that he's got an older brother that's in the NFL. And honestly, when you watch him play, like it's hard to not kind of like see at least his ceiling as something like an AJ Terrell, who's like a really underrated, like good NFL cornerback. So I think, it's that's an easy projection. So that like there is probably that top end ability. And, but I do agree with you. So I don't know if, I've seen some people rate him as high as like, a top 20 prospect in the draft. And I don't know if I'm there, but I think you really could end up with being one of the better pros from this class. Like he's got a lot of really good sense. I feel like he's a guy you're going to want on your team. Like he can play specials for you. I think he did play some specials for Clemson and like got some punt blocks and stuff. Like I think he brings like day one value like that. And if that's his floor, like I think even AJ Terrell took a little bit to become the player that he is. If that's his floor for a couple of years and then has the ceiling of an AJ Terrell, I really do like the player. Some of it, the high. If you were to just watch the highlights, he would look like one of the best corners in this class.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, I think he's more polished as a prospect right now than his brother was coming out, and I do think like it almost sounds like I don't like him, and that's not the case because like I feel like his floor is really solid number 2 corner for the next like 10 years, which is not a bad thing by any means. I think his ceiling is he could be nice and really good. I think he's a little bit more scheme dependent than some think. But that being said, like if he's your number 2 corner going into this season, I would feel really confident over, where we were last year, where it's like, all right, who's number 2? Oh wait, Jalen's hurt. All right, who's going to be our corner this year? And if you go into 2026 with Jalen and Terrell out there lining up and then Gordon in the slot, I think you're in a really strong spot in terms of floor for that group.
Yeah. Did Terrell played mostly outside. Do you know if he has any history of playing inside?
I did not see any.
I'll look it up right now.
I don't. And if he
did, a lot of the
guys
in this class didn't play any. Like none of these guys have played a lot of or like have been exclusively outside corners their whole careers.
Yeah, which is odd because like when I look at some of their makeup, it's like, oh, they could dabble inside a little bit, but they just didn't.
No.
And I don't know if it's just
Yeah,
because of the way college football is right now or what, but
yeah, he played a decent amount in the slot too, and you know what,
really,
that checks out because he played one game with like almost a quarter of all his his slot snaps, but so it's a little bit skewed, but they did like to blitz him a lot, so they got him in that position a little bit. So I can imagine now a little bit more of him on tape being there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'm not the biggest fan of Tacario Davis. If we can touch on him kind of briefly, he would probably be a better like fit style wise for what DA would do. But I just think that the prospect that Terrell is just for me so much higher than Tacario Davis. I don't need to spend a ton of time on him. He is one of the guys that I thought was like a Nahshon Wright type.
Yep. My notes the first time I was watching him, or the first few things I watched of him, I wrote down Nahshon Wright clone, which to me is not a great thing. I was one of those people who was not really hurt when he walked to the Jets in free agency. I think he's a little bit faster than I think Tacario is a little faster than Nahshon. And he uses his length well, but like if that's exactly who they want for their outside corner prototype, I could see it because he has a lot of those traits that Al Harris seems to like.
Yeah,
so
this could
like from
absolutely
that
be
front,
something
I
that
could
they
see it.
say, like later in the draft, as opposed to like targeting with a premium pick.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely. And between
but
the two, that's the one of the easiest decisions.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, like totally a Nahshon Wright type, long, like risky, slender outside corner. He's got good straight line speed, but he can get himself in trouble and get himself into trail a lot because his lateral movement isn't great. He's got some nice hands. Like he could, like, if you want to know what he could be, if he gets into the right coaching situation that lets him kind of play a little bit more free, like something like the Nahshon Wright played in the NFL, he can be a good player for you. But it is kind of like, at any given Sunday, he could give up 2 catches for 87 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he has a lot of physical traits that are fun, but on the field, like he's about as he's going to be about as boomer bust as Nahshon Wright was, and I just don't see it long term as a thing unless somehow he can get quicker and better at diagnosing things, which I don't see.
Yeah. So Terrell moves on.
Yep.
Okay. Chris Johnson versus Chandler Jones. Either of these guys you feel very passionate about? You want to lead out
on? I like Chris Johnson. I thought he had really strong ball production over his career, really sound. He just the thing of his tape that a lot of people will rightfully call out is that he struggles against bigger receivers. I love his special teams contributions. I like a lot of what he does. I think he's a really sound guy. I think athletically, there's a lot to really, really like. From all I can find online, he seems to be a really well-respected guy. I just don't know how he'll hold up outside versus some of the bigger receivers full time. But athletically and what he gives you in special teams, I like him a lot.
Yeah. I think even your kind of tone around it is similar to the way I was going through it. Is like I really couldn't find anything that I didn't like about his game. Like he moves nice. He can be rough and like play aggressive and violent, but he can also be patient and play smart. And I'm not sure his straight line speed is the best, but he ran well. He plays really in control. He checks the athlete box. He's ideal size. He's only 21 years old, but like I just don't know. I just don't know if I loved it. Like it was almost just like when you play Mario in in any of the Mario games, and he's just your baseline fighter that's like an 82 overall in every category. Like that's kind of what I mean. I guess he's a better athlete than that, but I'm giving him credit for it, apparently. But his game is really, really nice. I just, for whatever reason, I just don't know if I thought he was elite or like he had like elite upside.
Yeah, it's just with him, it's one of those things where like the ball production's there, the athleticism's there, but when you watch the tape, it's not like, holy cow, this guy is something special. I think, if you were to take him in like the third, fourth, fifth round, you're like, wow, we got a really strong player value wise here. But if you're asking me to take him in the first or second round, I don't know that he has all of the traits that I'd want in that kind of selection. But that being said, like if this was a mid-round corner selection, I would feel really, really good about it. I like the versatility he brings. I don't have the splits of his position, but I think he did a decent little bit of work in the slot. He can do both man and zone. I think he just does a lot of things pretty good. But pretty good doesn't, push you into the first round. I think somebody's going to talk themselves into it. Not necessarily the first round, but maybe mid to high second round because there might be a run on corners by that point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some people talking themselves into things, and I feel like there's people are watching a lot of the development of corners as of late versus, doing some of the big signings and doing the big trades. They see those things. And I think because this draft class is deep, that initially people are going to be like, oh, we'll wait and hold off till the mid rounds. But some of these teams, like really good teams like the Ravens and whatnot are going to take guys like this because they do exactly what they need to do. And if you've got a few superstars and a lot of really good role players, that can win you championships.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I agree. And then we have Chandler Rivers. Any strong thoughts on Chandler Rivers? I was actually a big fan of this tape.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys who plays much bigger than his size. He's got a lot of experience as well, which I think is important. Like there's some tackling things here and there, but I think that's more size than lack of, ability to do so. But he's athletic. He's got a lot of experience and he does a lot of things well. I don't know exactly what he did in the slot, but I feel like he's a guy who could probably be earmarked for moving into the slot and being able to keep up with kind of the trend of power slots or speed slot guys that are doing more and more damage in the league.
He did some slot stuff. He has a little bit more slot experience than some of the guys in this class. I think he was probably in there like 30% or so. I honestly thought his coverage ability there was good too. I thought that, I really did think that his versatility was a check. I thought, if he needed to, he could play NFL corner at outside and at inside. I think he's a good click and close, and I think he navigates traffic well. He's another one of those guys that's just like, it's clear that he's a leader on the defense. Navigates blocks well too. Like he'll engage and rip off. He's not scared of contact, and he'll bring it to people. He's got just a good, nice, aggressive game. And honestly, I thought, before I even saw these rankings, I would have had Chandler Rivers ahead of Chris Johnson. But I also thought that Chandler Rivers probably just, fit, what DA might like a little more.
Yeah. And it's an odd thing because like there are moments where he's a pretty sound tackler, and then there are moments where I just don't think he has enough size to finish some tackles.
Yep.
And I think that's something that'll hurt him, especially, at the NFL level where there's a lot of medium size wide receivers coming at you with a full head of steam. And I feel like that could definitely be something that could cause some concern.
Oh yeah.
I definitely saw like a willingness to tackle. Not that he can't tackle, but like
Yeah.
when you think of some of the like comical tackling moments from sitcoms where they like jump on your back and get dragged for a bit, I see a little bit of that with him. Not for lack of effort, but I feel like he's one of those guys who will make some really nice plays and then piss a lot of fans off because he just got, shrugged off on the way to a, 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, he'd be one of those guys you pencil in as fully like someone you're going after because you like their coverage, at least for me on the outside. I mean, I guess, like I said, the fact that he can, if you have someone that you can trust to put in either of those positions, that's good depth. I don't think he really fits either of those like molds perfectly well. But and again, playing at Duke, it's not exactly the highest level of competition.
Yeah.
Are you Chris Johnson here or are you Chandler Rivers here?
I'm Chris Johnson. I think he provides you more total value and as a prospect and everything. I actually have him rated a little higher than most. I have him as my 6th ranked corner because I like what he does. I just don't necessarily love it. And I do really like what he does in special teams. I think one of the reasons I really like him is just watching how kind of that Seattle secondary played of just really sound football. And I think, he's a guy who you could put out there and feel pretty confident about, but also is going to create some movement on special teams, whether it be blocking a punt or making a great block or blocking a kick. Like he provides you a lot of upside and roster flexibility.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. And like I said, it's really hard to not look at it and just like a lot of anything, like any one of the categories you want to pick. It's really hard to not like what he does. Like athlete, like checks the athlete box. Like I said, ideal size, only 21 years old. He's got good patience. He like I said, he can be rough, but he can also he can be smart in the situations and he moves well. Yeah. I'm going to be higher on Chandler Rivers than most. I really like Chandler Rivers, so I'll plant that flag, but we can't put Chris Johnson through. Ephesians Prysock.
Greatest name on this list.
Yes.
On name alone, I would push him through. Interesting guy. I don't know if you've watched a ton of him. He oddly enough is one of those guys who you would think with his size and arm length would be a little more aggressive than he is. I feel like in terms of ball production, he's not a guy that jumped off the screen in terms of trying to make a play versus just trying not to let something bad happen. But my gosh, he's got long arms and does a lot of things interesting, but there's just like, as much as I like some of the flashes and some of the things he does, he stays too upright most of the time. And if you're that big and aren't really, going for the ball and trying to make plays, I find that a little odd. Like sometimes feels that he was, a little bit scared of contact, or not contact, but like scared of messing up along the way. But I do like his special teams versatility. He's got a blocked kick on his resume and a lot of special teams tackles. So he's somebody like later end of the draft, if you want to take a flyer on somebody to be kind of that gunner special teams guy, which as we saw last year can definitely make an impact on the game if you block a field goal. I do like that, but as a corner, there's some good coverage ability, but at the end of the day, it's about being able to make plays, and I just don't see a lot of like playmaking ability from him.
Yep. Yeah, and what's funny, I didn't know that he tested it like that, especially in the agility stuff, because I didn't think I think he's a fine mover, but I didn't think he was an elite one, which I thought kind of capped what my overall ceiling was for him. But I really do like the player. Like I didn't really know where he was projected to be drafted. If it's later on in the draft, I love it. If it was like, if you're competing with Jermod McCoy, I don't think, in that situation. I'd come away taking
No.
Ephesians Prysock, but I think that someone's going to draft him and like the guy that they get. Like he's kind of similar to a couple of the guys we've talked about in that I like his coverage stuff. They kind of used him everywhere, so he gives you some versatility. And like you said, he's big and has long arms that have some pop to them. He's got aggressive hands. He's not afraid to use them. Like that's at least a floor for some teams like a DA team in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's that's the interesting thing about him is he uses his length. He has some physicality to it, but in terms of just I want to see more of that in the ball production side. I want to see him go after it. I want to see him, use that because you see moments of it, and there's a lot of things to like, but there's probably 3 to 4 interceptions he left on the field in my eyes this past season, just on not being super aggressive in those moments. But I don't know how much of that is. It's always hard to tell how much of that is coaching and how much of that is the position you're put in and schematic things. Because sometimes if your back's a little bit more, to the quarterback, you're not as apt to be able to make as many plays.
Yeah.
But from what I saw, I felt like the ball production could have been there and it wasn't. And that's for me, if you're going to have that size and have the potential to do it, I'd just like to see more ball production. But other than that, there's a lot to like from special teams contributions. And I'm actually pretty surprised by the agility scores. He doesn't move like that to me in the tape, but who knows? Maybe there's more to be unlocked there.
He's a bad mover, but that was, that's good to see for him. Shout out Ephesians. Yeah. I think we both agree though. Jermod McCoy moves on, and he's another one of those guys that we can talk about him more. We don't need to talk about him twice, so we can talk about him as some later rounds come on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an easy one. I like McCoy a lot.
Okay, now we're into some better matchups here. Mansoor Delane or Keith Abney.
Now this is where does the fact that he's not going to be there factor in further?
I think that we just need to try and consider if all else things equal, who would be there. I think we're just trying to pick best possible player for the Bears so that the list is a little bit of our guide to where these guys are ranked.
The thing I'll say, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but do you see Delane as more zone than man? Not that he can't, but that he's more comfortable in zone than man moments. I felt like that at times. I don't think that he can't do man. I just feel like maybe he has a little bit more comfortability in zone. But again, not.
I think he 100% prefers to play with his eyes, and it can almost get him in trouble a little bit sometimes. He can be good and patient, especially when he's in trail, but I think he does prefer to keep the play in front of him for something like zone. And honestly, his best plays are those settling back a little bit, then click and close and making a play, and that stuff with him is really special. He's a playmaker on that front. He's got good instincts. He trusts them. He's another guy with ideal size. I think he might be a little bit slender on the weight side. I don't actually know where he ended up being. Yeah, 187, but that's fine for me.
Yeah. And to me, I like him a lot. If he was, if he was somebody that we could have on the Bears, I would be quite happy. But the thing that stopped him from being to me, Patrick Surtain, next level corner prospect is that I felt like I came away from his tape thinking that if he's in more man situations, he can get into a little bit more trouble. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be good. But if he's in a more predominantly man system, I think that doesn't suit him as well. I still think he'll be a rock solid corner. If he was in a more zone-based scheme, I think he's going to be fantastic. But that's from my notes I had on him. That was really my only knock, is that he seemed more suited for zone than man. But I don't think we're going to find a perfect prospect corner-wise in this draft.
Yep. Yeah. And honestly, I like Keith Abney as a player. But I just think, all else equal, at least for me, there's not really any doubt that Delane would be the better
no,
player.
it's a better prospect, more athleticism, less, mental mistakes on the field. Just the overall better player.
Yep. So crazy that 187 is a 4 out of 10, and someone that's like 5, someone that's like 5 pounds more would be in this like the 60th percentile. It's like, okay, you're talking about like, yeah, whatever. All right. Brandon Cisse and Colton Hood. This is a tough one, man. This is now you're making I don't that it didn't instantly pop into my head who I think wins here.
No, because you can make a strong case for either. I think plug and play, like day one, I like Colton Hood a little bit more.
I do too, I think.
But year 2 beyond, I don't think Colton has as high of a ceiling if they can get, if the coaches can get a hold of him and take those traits that he does have and turn him into something. So it's like, do you want the rock solid guy who you're going to feel really confident about, or do you want to take the bet on the traits, which, in the first round and early second round, you do have to factor that in. And then at that point, there's a little bit of coaching arrogance that comes into play of like, well, let's take the guy that we believe we can turn anybody. I mean, look what we did with Nashawn Wright. Like, we can take somebody and turn them in and unlock that potential. And I think that plays a part into it, because I do think this coaching staff believes they can make anyone much better.
The clay.
Yeah. So that there's and I mean, and Colton's got a strong ceiling too. He's he has all the traits you want. Maybe doesn't have like fantastic size, but good enough arm length to get the job done. And I like him a lot. So it's just about, which flavor of ice cream do you want? Do you want something fun and exciting, or do you want, a strong scoop of chocolate or vanilla?
Yeah, it's tough, man. They're both nice players, a little bit different, but both really nice in their own way. I think I think Colton Hood is a guy that's like a better cornerback, and I think that Cisse is a better football player, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of everything you ask a cornerback to do on average, I'd say that Cisse probably does better. But like the core, the most, like the 80% thing that you need your cornerback to do, I think I would trust Colton Hood doing more. And I think that they both have some really nice upside. And I think right now, like the upside stuff for Colton Hood to reach it is like technique stuff and maybe like some discipline stuff. I think I would go Hood here.
I would too, personally. I think he's more ready-made to come in and really take over. And I think where you're taking him in the first or second round, probably the first round, you're expecting him to contribute right away, not have some time to develop.
Right.
Especially considering the current hole at CB2. So to me, Hood probably is the correct choice there, but I don't think you could be mad either way.
Yep, I'm good with Hood. Okay, we got Chris Johnson and Jermod McCoy. Chris Johnson's your guy. I think, Jermod McCoy's getting a lot of talk of, I know that he's got some injury stuff, but people, I think, because of the year off, kind of like liken it to a prospect like Jamar Chase, and then like he can take a year off, and his tape was so good a year ago that people still think like, he's worthy of like a pretty high, I think, first round pick is where he's kind of being projected right now.
Yeah. There's talk of, kind of between Delane and him of like
CB1.
The Chiefs take one of those two. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and off sheer talent and ceiling, McCoy definitely could be the best of this bunch. It's a matter of where do you think he's at? Why was he out so long? Because I feel like last season there was like, oh, we're inching back towards it. He's going to come back at some point, and then it just didn't happen.
Right.
But then he goes out and if we can pull up his testing, like I was very curious to see, like, all right, where's his testing going to be? And then, like, from everything I heard, he blew his testing out of the water. So, do you
He
feel
did.
good about that, or did he just train up for testing, or how is his body going to hold up?
Right.
If you feel good about the medicals, I mean, he could be a legit CB1 for the next 10
Yep.
years.
Yeah.
Like, he's got
yeah. And if you
everything
watch
you
the
can
tape,
want.
like it's awesome. Like we really don't need to have this conversation as far as like the Chris Johnson versus Jermod McCoy thing. Like when you have watched the Jermod McCoy tape, it's like it's like that's just special stuff. Like plays the game with like so much sense, and like as soon as the ball's near him, he's a playmaker. Like he moves special, he's aggressive. And I had no idea he tested like this either. I thought he was still kind of like nursing back to health. Because when did that injury happen? Last off season, right? He tore his ACL.
See, I had thought it was towards the end of the previous season, but maybe it was during maybe I'm misremembering, because like it felt like he was supposed to be back, and then he just never
between the season. Like I'm thinking the hope was like, okay, well we'll get him for the season at some point, and it was like, yeah, January.
Oh, January.
So
okay,
right when the last season ended.
Okay,
so they were hoping they were going to get him back for the fall, but he just never did.
Then that just didn't happen. And like if he doesn't have that injury, we're probably talking about a potential top 5 pick.
Yeah, and honestly, if there wasn't murmurs about him coming back during the season, like asking someone to come back from an ACL in 6 months, and people were like, yeah, he's just not going to play this year, we probably wouldn't be having as many concerns about his injury as this like weird lingering thing,
Yeah, and like then it enters into the conversation of, was it fully injury in rehab? Is it a little bit of self-preservation, which obviously can be a red flag to some. But man, he's fun.
Yeah.
There's so much to love.
We can talk about him more honestly as we move on to the next rounds, because he's a pretty clear win here.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But Chris Johnson's nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, D'Angelo Pons and Avieon Terrell. I could kind of tell, I think, from tonality wise, that you're not as high on Terrell as I am. I really like Terrell, honestly. I don't know how he projects for the Bears, but I think he's going to be a good NFL pro.
I would agree with that.
I think that of these two, I like Pons way more.
I like Pons substantially more. But I think the way you laid that out is exactly how I'm feeling on Terrell, is that I think he's going to be a very good corner with some CB1 upside. I just don't feel like it's in the Bears schematic, the schematics of the Bears defense and what DA asks of his corners. I think he's going to be a good corner, and in the right system, he's going to be a very good corner for a while. I think he's very likely to ascend past his brother, which is nothing to shake your head at. I just, when envisioning him in this defense, I just don't see it as well, and especially when comparing him to Pons, that's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, we can move Pons through. All right, Delane and Hood.
Well, I feel like day one corner wise, Delane's going to be the better player and likely has the higher ceiling and wins in a lot of things. Schematically, I feel like maybe Hood is a little bit more leaning towards what DA wants, but that's really the only argument I can make between the two, is that maybe he fits that man system a little bit better. But the percentage of better, who's to say? And with everything else, like, they still play zone throughout the game. And Delane just, he checks those boxes really well.
Yep. I think I agree. I think pure what we do, maybe fit wise, it would be Colton Hood more. And I think we both agree we like the prospect Colton Hood. But I also don't think that's not to say that Delane can't do what DA is going to ask him to do.
Yeah.
And
I think he'll be able to do it.
And as a prospect, he is just like, the stuff. I just think he's in a tier above Colton Hood.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but what I think his ball production at the next level, if they can allow him to be him, is going to be fun and special.
I also think that Hood is going to be a player that's going to take a couple of years. I don't think he has a ton of snaps in college, and it might be season 3 or 4 before he really gets to see legs under him, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think he'll be like a solid. You can like trust him to be a decent CB2 for the first year or so, but it's going to take him a few years before he becomes who he's going to be. Right. Whereas you can plug Delane in week 1 and he's likely to be your CB1. And if for some reason he's your CB2, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll put Delane through.
Yep.
Pons and McCoy now. I'm interested to hear where you want to go here, because I think
my heart
exactly. It seems like you've got a pretty good love on for the way the Pons plays the game, and I get that.
Yeah, my heart says Pons, but if I'm going to be completely honest, in terms of likelihood of having excellent NFL career and like top tier ability and production, I think the ceiling is going to be much higher for McCoy. Yeah. And, if we're talking about a high-end draft pick, you want somebody who's going to be a difference maker in more than just one way. And McCoy is electric. His ceiling is really high. And, if you feel good about his medicals, he's probably fighting for, your CB1 job day one. And within the next 2 to 3 years, could be a guy you're talking about as one of the best corners in the league.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the upside of him.
Yeah. And it just happens to be that the way he plays the game is something that exactly what DA would want.
Yeah.
So I think we move McCoy through there. We do love the player D'Angelo Pons is. I think
probably if you wound up with him, you're feeling
great.
Wants
to take a risk on him and put him outside, that'd be cool. But I think he could move in and instantly play the game the way that oh man, who was that? Who was our nickel on that 2018 Bears defense? That's a little bit like how he plays. Bryce Callahan.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And like if we didn't have Kyler Gordon and we're sitting, at a spot, like that's a guy I'd be like, yes, put him in. Like I felt very similarly, although I think Pons is a much better player to Sanderson coming out. Like that dude who plays really well. He's been a little bit exposed here and there as of late. But
he's been up and down because he's had hot flashes too.
Yeah, I think Pons is more polished overall. But like I feel similarly where like if we had an opening at nickel, I'm 100% okay with him leading the charge because he gives you everything you need. But let's be fair, how many teams are drafting a nickel that high? It's just not, and when you have a guy whose floor is still pretty strong, but the ceiling is potentially to be one of the best corners in the league, it's.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that how Pons translates, like, I don't think he's quite the level of prospect that Devin Witherspoon, for example, someone that kind of came in and it was like, this guy's probably just going to be a slot corner is, but I think that he can have similar success like Devin Witherspoon. And I would say that like, if you wanted to like, kind of like class out the ceiling of those players, I'd say Witherspoon's ahead of Pons, but Pons would be ahead of someone like Bryce Callahan. Like I think Pons could, if you get him in a good defense and let him just kind of like develop in the slot, he could be a multiple-time Pro Bowler. But I think we agree. That's McCoy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this is interesting. I think this is kind of like pick your fight. Pick the battle that you want to you want to be on here. Like as far as fit, they both fit. McCoy's probably a better fit. McCoy comes with that injury history and a little bit of a an asterisk because he doesn't have a ton of playing time. He had one up and down season, I think, kind of spot starting, and then one great season starting. But the tape that we have is like a perfect fit for what we want. Or Mansoor Delane, who is another awesome prospect. He like I said, ideal size, He's got good instincts. He's a playmaker. His click and close is good. He's savvy. He has that swagger you want a CB to have. Well, they both do.
Yeah.
But like you said, he does like to keep I think he's better in man, but he doesn't play a ton of the type of man that DA would play, where you're getting in your face. And he does.
Yeah.
And he also is really good sitting back and keeping the game in front of him. So that's kind of the poison. The less good fit, both great prospects. The less good fit with like a bit of a squeakier, clean resume, or the guy that's like the perfect fit, but comes with some injury history and less experience.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like there's more concerns with McCoy, but I think the upside and flashes lead you to believe he can do more if he gets to that point. The thing I really hadn't even realized up until a few days ago was that McCoy's only 20 and he won't be 21 until August. So he's younger. So like that also plays into it, because he's showing these flashes pretty darn young. And where is he going? And Delane, I believe, is 22. So like, where is McCoy going to be as he hits 22, 23 and starts getting into things? Okay. So that's where, like, I feel like if you're okay with the medicals and just the amount of talent he has at the age he is, I would lean more that way, just because, like,
I'm with you. Let's go McCoy here. I think that would be like, if the stars aligned that way, I can't imagine the Bears wouldn't reach for McCoy in that situation. That 2024 tape, he was 18. I didn't know he was that young.
Yeah, I didn't realize that till the other day when somebody's like, "Hey, he's one of the younger prospect or one of the younger corners," which is makes sense, because some of these, there's a lot of 24 and 25-year-olds in this defensive class as a whole.
Yeah,
I didn't realize he was as young as he was, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the talent level for his age and just ability that he was already displaying. It's like, where can he be by the time he hits like 23, 24? If he wound up somehow because of medicals, and he'd be a guy where, theoretically, because of medicals, maybe he does fall a little further. Maybe teams aren't comfortable. So he could be a guy that does slip a little bit if teams aren't 100% sure. And, the Bears have taken corners with a bit of shoulder issue injury, or not shoulder, but just injury history in the past. So, if you're not really feeling, where he's at with his injury, I think the Bears would probably be more than comfortable taking him in the first round if he were to fall that far.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good list. I think if I were to break it down and like kind of tier it myself, it would probably come out pretty similar to this. There may be maybe a couple of those guys that lost early that may have made a surge in a loser's bracket kind of thing. But no, I like that. I think that give Bears fan a good idea that if of who to keep their eyes on if there starts to be a free fall for any of these really top end guys in the first round, or we're picking in the later rounds.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway though is this really is a strong class and deep class cornerback wise, where, if you get somebody in the second, third, fourth, fifth round, you can still feel pretty comfortable, which is nice, because that is a need for the Bears. And if they see somebody at 25 they really like, and maybe one of the top flight corners isn't there, you can still find strong value in the mid rounds.
Yep. Cool. Do we want to call her there and then go tackle safeties here?
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, appreciate you guys. I don't know. We're going to end this here now, Q. Appreciate you guys joining. We'll take a little 5-minute.
Thank you guys for watching, listening. Make sure to go check out our safety episode, which we'll be recording momentarily. And until next time, bear down.